What's going on, everybody? JT here. We've got C. Will. We've got David. This is episode 56 of The Next Block, and we're excited to have a super special guest. We've got Sean Lee. Sean Lee is a Forbes contributor, a senior advisor to the Crypto Council for Innovation, a co-founder of the Odyssey Network, and many of you in our audience might remember him as the previous CEO of the Algorand Foundation. Super excited to have this conversation. Odyssey provides a secure, programmable, decentralized access layer to all of Web3 through dWallets, which are kind of like decentralized wallets, D-apps. We're going to dive deeper into that, but super excited to have this conversation. And Sean, thanks for joining the show.
Super excited to be here all the way on the other side of the world. Great to see everyone here. I'm looking forward to a very interactive dialogue, and throw as many questions as you have at me. I would be happy to answer them.
Absolutely.
And we will.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, and good morning to
right.
all those that are tuning in bright and early. I know if you're like Sean, you're actually tuning in pretty late from Hong Kong, but for the rest of our viewers, it's probably somewhere between 7, 10 in the morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. So good morning to you, and thanks for joining on this special episode. If you're tuning in a little late, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive into it, Sean. This has been a long time coming. We've been looking forward to talking to you for a while. And it looks like Odyssey is building something really interesting in the interoperability space. So let me throw it over to you to fill us in on what Odyssey is and what are the goals of the project.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So the Odyssey Network is what we would call as a decentralized access control layer. It functions like a layer one, but the goal of it is to be able to bring and bridge assets together coming from different ecosystems. So you have a holistic view in regards to how you manage your assets from a multi-chain perspective, and also give this notion that you have an accounts that essentially allow you to policy manage everything that you have. Now, the reason why we came up with this, and by the way, just to give you an idea, the Odyssey Network is spelled Odsy. We do pronounce it like the space Odyssey or the Greek epic poem Odyssey, but many people may not realize that I am the S in the Odyssey, Odsy. So we have four co-founders, and essentially what we're doing here is something truly amazing. If you think about the current state of the blockchain ecosystems today, we have many layer ones, many layer twos. I'm sure in the future we'll have layer threes and layer fours, or however many numbers we like to get to. And the interesting aspect of it is that as we continue to see the blockchain ecosystem become more vibrant, you see more assets being created on different chain, and rightfully so, because you want to be able to leverage the liquidity and the economic value that are being able to generate from each one of the blockchain ecosystems. The issue with that, with where we are today, though, especially what you talked about in terms of interoperability, the only kind of solution we have is trying to create bridges that bring together all of these different values that are kind of locked in from each one of the blockchain perspective, right? And if you think about, I mean, without naming names, right? If you think about this kind of math problem, I know it's a little bit early on a Sunday morning, but let's do this together, right? If you've got 5 chains, yeah, A, B, C, D, and E, and you need to bring them all together using bridges, how many bridges do we need to create?
Going to be 25? I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, like at least
whatever
10.
the number is. Let's go 6. Yeah. How about 10? 10 chains. I mean, we definitely have more than 10 chains out there, right? That are widely used. Right. I mean, it becomes a math problem. And the biggest problem with that also is that each one of these bridges are not built with the same quality, with the same security audits, and without the same standards. So essentially, what you have is a very hodgepodge of different connectivity points, and thereby no wonder what we see very often that a lot of these bridges do fail. I also like to use an analogy, if I may. If you think about in the real world how bridges are being built and what bridges are actually being used for, bridges is really to bring people and goods from point A to point B, usually over some sort of obstacle, right? I mean, that's no magic there. How do we do bridges in crypto? We don't exactly do that.
They live in the middle, right?
Yeah, like we create a replica on the other side, and then we kind of use something in the middle, smart contracts, and then we try to say, hey, these two things represent each other, but we leave that smart contract and the value that it's locking in on the bridge. You
Right.
think about that from a physics perspective, right? Like you're just stacking more and more things on the bridge, whereas in physical world, we don't leave anything on the bridge. Well, we try not to anyways. So if you think about that analogy, you can kind of see where bridges are useful, they are important, but they are a step along the evolution in terms of how we're going to bring interoperability and value together from across different ecosystem. So getting back to Odyssey, that's exactly the problem that we're trying to solve. This problem that you have various different assets locked in different ecosystems, and you can't exactly just say point-to-point solutions and be done, right? And we kind of chatted a little bit about that just before the show start. So the way we look at it is say, okay, what if we were to take a step back and say, all right, all of these ecosystems, all of these assets, all of these smart contracts out there, how do we then create a standardized way and a decentralized way to access your assets that are logged in on different ecosystem? But we take a step outside, right? Rather than sitting on top of any of them, we take a step back and we say, everything is out there. I'm just going to create an access control layer toward all of these assets that are sitting outside, but in a completely decentralized manner. So that's what we're doing, right? We're not creating dozens of bridges out there just to bring things together. We're not doing any funky things. All we're doing is saying, look, you can create a decentralized account that gives you assets to access to all of your assets sitting in different places. Now, of course, there's a lot of technical capabilities and differentiators that we're building in. We can talk about that in a bit. But I'll pause it right there and see if that makes sense in terms of what we're trying to do.
No, yeah, it does. And obviously that is the biggest problem that we see in crypto, because you have all these pockets of money and value that are stored on different chains. And even on a lot of chains, just like you were saying, you want to do it in a decentralized way, because we also have a lot of gatekeepers on those bridges that are allowing or not allowing certain things to flow through. And that obviously isn't going to really be helpful either, because we need, it has to be like a bridge. If you're driving down the road, you just go across it. You don't think about like stopping and telling somebody this or having to get access. You just use it. So it is very cool to see what you guys are doing. And I'd be interested to see your thoughts on like what's currently out there in the space as well. I mean, for Algorand, obviously a lot of our viewers, we see state proofs as, this maybe a solution. Silvio has talked a lot about how state proofs can do it, and you don't have to use, as in his terms, the shaky bridges. And then you also have projects like Cosmos, you have Polkadot, you have tons of things out there. So what are your thoughts kind of on some of those things that we see in the space?
I think there are lots of different ways to solve kind of this interoperability problem, and Odyssey, we're not looking to solve all the problem, right? Because at the end of the day, blockchain is about composability, right? All of us are coming up with different pieces that hopefully all of the pieces coming together will then propel us to the next phase. That's how we went from Bitcoin, which is essentially just a decentralized network of value, and then we went to Ethereum, and now you can have smart contract and programmability towards the asset and dApps. And then now the next phase is how do we bring things together, right? Interoperability obviously has got to be the next phase. So the way we looked at it is we thought, okay, how are we able to create this notion of a unified account, right, that sits on a decentralized network that can let you sign transactions on all the chains? So essentially, that's what we are doing on the Odyssey network, which is we've created this new blockchain primitive. We call it the dWallet, which is a dynamic decentralized wallet. Now, there's a reason why we didn't do two Ds, right? Because two Ds obviously makes it very, very hard to pronounce. So we took a page out of dApp, so dWallets, but it's a dynamic decentralized wallet. Now, what can it do? I like to do things in three. So I'm going to give you 3 points in terms of what the dWallet does. The first thing is this dWallet is basically a signing mechanism. It's a signing mechanism that lives on chain. It's an on-chain signing mechanism. It can sign transactions across any chain. Not just EVM, not just a chain or two chains, any chain. Yeah, so that's the very first thing. The second thing is this dWallet allows you to add programmability towards the object itself, right? So you can now do things like, oh, I don't know, let's say the 4 of us here co-own a dWallet. All right, so this is our treasury wallet. Okay. We can set policies such as spending limit. Each one of us are different, or we can have permissions and access control, restriction rules, potentially even some of the compliance and regulatory rules that we're seeing quite frankly out there now. So this programmability allows you to add a lot of personalized but also rules-based access control towards any of the assets that are sitting on any chain. So that's the second aspect. The third aspect is also very interesting. Because this is a signing mechanism on chain, or you can almost call it a wallet on chain, the entire wallet is transferable. Now, when I say transferable, I don't mean passing keys, because if you think about it, this wallet or this account basically is storing or pointing to multi-chain assets. So it's not a single key that we're managing. It is all of the keys on all of the assets that you're managing within the single signing mechanism. So those are the three things, right? Sign transactions on all chains, add programmability towards how you can access these assets, and then potentially you can transfer the entire wallet by itself. Now, when I say transfer, it doesn't mean transferring ownership. That could be one use case. I could collateralize it. I can lend you my wallet for 2 days and 3 seconds, and then I can get it back, right? So you can think about a lot of very interesting use cases just based on those three things that you're able to do. Things like, for example, if you were to build a DAO, right? If you were to build a DAO today on any single chain, that DAO essentially has to follow the structure of that particular chain. And you have to create tokens, governance tokens and whatnot, that governs how the DAO works using that chain's standard, right? If you build a DAO on Odyssey, number one, this DAO can now accept multi-chain assets. So the four of us here could say we're all part of the same DAO, but JT, you put in BTC and Will, you put in ETH, and then I'm going to put in Pepe, right? Whatever it is, right? But you can essentially decide on how you want to participate in the DAO. But here's a really cool thing. We could even write a policy. We talk about programmability. You can write a policy to say anyone that put in BTC and ETH, because it's the two largest tokens by market value out there, you automatically have higher voting rights. For example, right? I don't know whether that makes sense or not. I'm just making that up, right? But the whole goal here is when you add programmability to these things, then all of a sudden now how you manage the assets and how you move assets around and how you create permissions around these assets opens a lot of very interesting doors that, quite frankly, we do in the real world today, but we've been very restricted in the crypto world until now.
So how do you guys keep your or how do you onboarding all these different chains that are out there, right? And how many, I guess, obviously, because dWallet is not fully live yet. You guys are still building it out.
We're
correct?
Still building.
And so,
yes.
Obviously, I'm sure there's you guys are going to try to get the most popular chains that are out there, immediately on it once it launches. But as the space grows, how easy will it be to add new chains and new assets and stuff like that to your dWallet and things like that?
That's a great question. Let me answer it this way. Remember when I mentioned the dWallet can sign transactions on any chain? Yep. What we're really doing is creating this new signing mechanism that combines the power or the capability of some of the more popular or commonly used signing algorithms out there, right? So things like ECDSA, EDDSA, Schnorr, and a few others. So essentially, just between the three of those, you pretty much covered 90+% of chains out there. Most chains use some combination thereof or one of the three. And so basically what that means is if there is a new chain that completely changes and uses a new algorithm out there, we can either add it ourselves as part of our updates, or we can work with the community to add it, and we can and make it as a contribution. But essentially, based on what we're doing now, we can already cover pretty much all the chains out there, at least all the popular ones, anyways.
And then what about for the developers who are wanting to maybe build with all the different programming languages and stuff?
Well, that's the other thing. So I think when we talk about interoperability, very often we're not only stuck within different ecosystem, we're also stuck with different languages, and obviously different languages obviously bring a lot of native, I guess, power or native specialties towards that particular chain. But at the end of the day, you can't really force developers to kind of learn a new language and then try to learn another new one and so on and so forth. So there is also an innovation that we're doing within the smart contract engine for Odyssey as well. And that is we are entirely WASM based, so WebAssembly language. So you can essentially use your most popular WebAssembly language out there, Go, Rust, Java, even C++, Python, JavaScript. You can code in any of those languages using our SDK and using our templates. And then the smart contract engine will pick it up and basically compile it and execute it on chain. So you, as a developers, don't really need to learn anything proprietary, regardless of how we write the chain ourselves.
Wow. So yeah, I want to I guess comment on there too. What this reminds me of is like a software version of Ledger, kind of, I guess, in my mind, because Ledger can connect to any platform. So just following up a little bit more about the dynamic or decentralized dynamic wallet, like where's the development at right now? Like when will this go live? Because I want to test it now, basically.
All right, great question. So I'm going to go back to our name first and give you a sense of the co-founding team and the members of the team that are actually building this quite frankly, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but phenomenal technology and evolution of what we're trying to bring through. So my three co-founders are all from Israel. They come from cybersecurity and counterintelligence background. So really, what they're really doing is bringing nation-state level kind of security mechanisms onto a blockchain for the purpose of managing multi-chain assets. That's what we're doing here. And we have a world-renowned, R&D team. Many of the deepest kind of modern cryptographic experts on the team right now, coming up with, the way how we are securing the assets on chain. I can talk a little bit about that later on as well. But the goal here is we're looking to launch the development network probably within the next 2 months, let's say, early summer timeframe. We have roughly about 10 early builder teams already approaching us. Some came from our investor network. Some just read our light paper and contacted us and say, hey, what if I want to build a decentralized custody solution on top of Odyssey? What would that look like? Can we build that together? Or what if I want to do a marketplace where I can actually transact entire wallets? Right? Remember, dWallets are transferable. So what if I have gaming assets, right, from different blockchain games that I want to actually, maybe work between guilds and lend them my wallets of artifacts and whatnot. So there are a lot of very interesting projects. So we roughly have about 10 project teams coming over right now. And the goal is by the time we have our DevNet ready to go, they'll be able to have an instance of the network to build upon. And then later on in the year, probably in the Q4 timeframe, we'll have our testnet ready. And then early next year, we'll go mainnet. And then, by then, not only would the network be ready, but we're going to have a number of applications that people can use, everything from your lending and staking protocols to decentralized custody, potentially for institutional clients, and then marketplaces and lending pools and the likes. That's our goal right now in terms of the roadmap.
Thank you. I'll say one more question. I know JT got a few questions there. So is this can we establish, is this more of a software as a service, or is this like a blockchain that will just connect to other blockchains?
That's a great question. So this is a blockchain. You can use it like a generic layer one, although the purpose, as you can imagine, isn't really one, right? So if you were to ask me, you're a developer and you want to build a DApp that really doesn't have any multi-chain kind of aspiration. You're very strictly looking at a particular chain. Then Odyssey, you can certainly build on Odyssey, right? But the power of the dWallet and all of the functionalities that we're bringing probably won't be as evident because of what we're trying to do. What we are really looking at are multi-chain centric use cases, right? Like some of the ones that I talked about before, or some of the ones that you just cannot do today, but you kind of wanted to act that way, right? You think about it. In today's world, we have lots and lots of currencies, right? Every country's got its own currency. We don't really wrap the Japanese yen, do we? Like, if you use the US dollar and you need to spend it in Japan, you go convert, right? You don't wrap different currencies. I don't know why we're wrapping all these things. I know it's a stopgap, right? And there's a certain way that you can do things. And certainly, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole point about crypto is there's still this massive speculative kind of aspect to it that even in today's world, in the severe bear market, is still overshadowing. And every now and then we see these things, these meme coins that pops up out of nowhere that does nothing.
David knows all about it.
I got enough Pepe to give away everybody.
Right. So I think for us, we're very much focusing on, what are you using blockchain for? Right? What was it developed in the first place? Why do you need crypto on blockchain? Like, crypto and blockchain should not operate without each other. That's how I look at it, right? And that's also why, a lot of the regulatory work that I do, like, if you talk to the regulators, the reason why they're so against crypto right now, obviously, education
in the
aside,
US at least,
because they see some of these coins and they're like, what the hell is it for? Right. And most people cannot answer other than the fact that I can trade it. Well, then, of course, it's an investment contract, right?
Yep.
So you got to make sure when you're developing things like what we're doing here, we are developing a blockchain. We will have a native token called the Odyssey token, but it's used as a transaction mechanism and a governance mechanism to allow for activities using these dWallets. That's what it's for. So our goal is very, very simple. It operates like a blockchain, but we are very specifically built for multi-chain use cases, and especially around an access control and security side.
Fantastic. So we got a couple audience questions tuning in right here. So we've got Don. I believe you answered this one, but I'm just going to put it up for context. You just answered this. What chain does the programmability exist on, which Odyssey will be its own chain? And what programming languages are used, which I believe you touched on that as well. But he has a follow-up question, which is a good one, I think. Where are the signing keys held? Is it like, because you can sign on all sorts of different wallets, blockchains. So it does kind of seem like there could be like a central vector for those keys to be attacked. Can you talk on the security of those keys?
Of course. And that's really where a lot of the core innovation comes from. And that's where the expertise of my co-founders really come in, right? So the way we're doing it is the Odyssey network is a security first network. And what we do is we have created an entirely new MPC algorithm that governs the entire security of the blockchain itself, right? Not just on the wallet or the app. We're not an app, right? We're a blockchain. So we actually have developed this entire new way of using MPC. Now, the good thing about MPC versus things like multi-sig and others is that MPC is MPC was designed to be chain agnostic. Multi-sig is chain specific, right? So we didn't want to go down that path, but we also looked at some of the existing MPC algorithms out there. Most of them are single digit node networks, right? 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5. Some of them may go, 5 out of 7 or whatever it is. Ours is actually entirely dynamic. Every validator within the Odyssey network will be there to help validate the user's permission to be able to sign chains. So what we have created is actually something that we are calling 2PC MPC. So 2PC. So there are basically 2 layers. It's a nested approach. The first layer is the user and the blockchain. Yeah, user holds 50% weight. Blockchain holds 50% weight. User cannot sign without the blockchain saying yes, you can, and blockchain cannot sign on behalf of the user, without the user knowing. 2 out of 2. All right. But then the next question is, the next layer is, how does the blockchain actually know how to do that? Right. So the blockchain relies on the validator network, and through consensus, we'll be able to come together to be able to produce the cryptographic signature that are required by the blockchain to match with the users before you can sign. It's 2-layered approach. Yeah. Now, the core difference here is that normally where you see MPC being implemented, there's a company on one side, and then there's a user on the other side. Right. So you think about things like Fireblocks and Copper and some of the more popular kind of MPC implementations out there is the company holding it. They may break it into multiple different nodes, but at the end of the day, the servers are all owned by them. Right. So you have to kind of trust them to do so. The way we're building it is it's entirely trustless. right? You trust, I guess you trust the network, but you don't have to trust any centralized party. The validators are out there to actually do that for you, but you don't know who they are, right? And the validator are spread across the entire network. So it's entirely trustless from a centralized entity perspective, but you're able to bring all of that together in a nested approach, whereby then match on top of that the policies that you've defined on the wallet layer. That's how you're actually allowed to do what you're trying to do. So if I'm trying to send 10 ETH out of the wallet between the four of us, let's say the four of us co-own this wallet, do I have the policy to do so? Do I have the access control, and do I have the spending limit to be able to do that? Maybe I don't, maybe I do. But until that point, until the MPC comes back and say, I could do it, and the policy says I can do it, even if I have access to the wallet, I still cannot send that 10 ETH out. That's what this is for.
Nice.
So it makes me want to build a business on this blockchain and not just look for a moon token. That's what.
Well, we will welcome that at some point. But certainly our goal, like I mentioned before, it's really for real world use cases, right?
Right.
Why access control is so fundamental to our lives. Like, I don't know if you guys use Gmail or something, right?
Yes,
Like,
I love
mean, most of
Gmail.
us have Gmail accounts. Like, if I create a Google Doc and I want to share with you, of course, to give you access control, right? Some of you may have write access, some of you have view access. I mean, access control is so fundamental to the digital world that we live in today. But we don't really do access control, in crypto. We don't really do it very well, especially not from a decentralized manner. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve. That's why we call ourselves a decentralized access control layer.
All right, so I got a couple things to add. One, I don't think any chain in the future is going to be complete without having Pepe on it. So you got to make sure you got some space on them blockchains for Pepe. But in a serious note, you touched on a few things in your what you just said there. One, consensus, right? What type of consensus is the blockchain of Odyssey going to be using? And also, decentralization is huge. Like, I know a lot of people want to make fun of Pepe or meme coins and whatnot, but there is, just like Bitcoin, right? No one knows who created Bitcoin, obviously some people have their ideas, but there's this idea that it was started in a truly decentralized manner, and then was able to grow into what it is today. Whereas it's kind of been flipped now in Web3, where all these projects are launching with big VCs behind the scenes, validators that are gatekeepers. I mean, a lot of people attack Algorand and say they have control over all who the validators are. They're the ones earning. I know they're trying to change that now. But there's all these things that make it seem like the average Joe who's on the street can't be in at the beginning because it's not truly decentralized. It's centralized, and then they want to build to that. So I guess, how does Odyssey plan to attack being truly decentralized in a way of validators and people able to help secure the network? And then also, what consensus mechanism will the blockchain use when validating the transactions and stuff like that?
All right, so I'll answer the second part first, which is what's the mechanism, right? The consensus, it is proof of stake, right? So I think most networks out there today are proof of stake, right? And there are certainly a lot of environmental, the advantages in terms of the proof of stake network. So that's certainly the case. Now, in terms of decentralization, I think, look, decentralization is a spectrum, right? There's no network out there from day one could be completely decentralized. That is very, very, very impossible to do. It is a spectrum. Now, you are correct, right? If you have a validator network and the validator kind of applications are gated, then it certainly doesn't give a vibe that it is decentralized enough, right? And yes, it is a spectrum, but how long is that spectrum? Is 3 years, 4 years down the road, and you're still gating it? Does that make sense? No. Probably not, right? But obviously, it depends on the implementation, depends on the architecture. Now, the way we are, Odyssey is looking at it, is that the validators can come in and out as they go, right? So we are entirely opening that up to both validators that may want themselves to be known, and also validators that don't want themselves to be known, right? The goal is that they have to pass the security. Obviously, we're very, very keen on security, as you can imagine. But as long as they're able to pass the specs and the procedural, the security procedures that we would require to be part of the validator network, then they can join. I mean, our goal here is to have thousands, if not even more, validators around that. And I think, what we're aiming for is, even when we launch, we're already going to have hundreds of validators, right? That's what we're aiming to do.
Yeah.
The good thing is we have lots of people reaching out to us, again, after reading the light paper, very interested in what we're doing, thinking that this is not another layer one replacement. Like, our whole narrative is not we're cheaper, faster, or more scalable, whatever it is, right? Like, there are so many chains out there, and they all unique. They all do something very interesting, right? We are not there to replace them. Yes, you can use Odyssey and as a layer one to build upon, sure. But our goal is to be able to bring value together. That's our main purpose. So while we are, trying to make sure that the capability, the development language, and all of those are as open as possible, but who can actually participate and who can consume and who can produce, we do want to leave that as open as possible. So that is our goal. Now, keep in mind, we're still building this, right? So there's going to be a lot more kind of updates and development, thought process that we're putting into it. But we're certainly going to keep the community updated on where we're going with that.
Yeah, I have one follow-up question as well. One, we see Ethereum is now proof of stake, and then I compare something like Algorand proof of stake. In Ethereum, to be a validator, you got to have, I think it's 32 ETH. And roughly that's a lot, right? It's a lot of money. And then obviously you got to look at how much space is required for your computer to actually run and stuff like that. For various blockchains that are out there, for Algorand, obviously it's very low. You can have one algo, right? What are the thoughts on like how much stake would be required to run a node, and then also what's would people be able to do this on a regular computer in their home, or is this something that would be you would need a pretty serious, robust system to be able to run one of these nodes for the network?
So I'm going to say we're still working on it. Our goal is to make the footprint as light as possible. If everyone needs 100 core to run a node, then I mean that's pricing on most people out, right? So we're certainly not looking at that. Can you run it on a cell phone? I don't know. We still have to test it out. We're a little bit too early in regards to what that is. And in regards to how much you need to stake, again, that also depends on how we're going to define the tokenomics as we go along. I think what we have in the light paper is a sense in terms of how the tokens will be distributed over a number of years. But at the same time, I think the specifics around kind of the staking aspect, the delegation aspect, those are still things that we're working on. So my apologies, I can't give you an exact answer right at this moment. Give me a few more months, as we continue to develop along. I'm certainly going to be able to share a bit more in that regard.
I mean, I can definitely tell we're going to have you back on the show, so that'll be a question we ask you for the next time.
All right.
And I guess something else I would say, I was literally just at the store yesterday, right? I have my wallet, obviously, on my phone, but I still have to use my card that I have for my bank account, right? And obviously, I'm using the chip card. Messes up 3 times, then I got to swipe it, messes up 2 other times. Finally, the transaction goes through, right? And this is where I think of, we're talking about utility, real world utility. What is your thought on crypto wallets and actual real world utility? I'm talking like being able to have a crypto wallet, walk into a Starbucks, Walmart, McDonald's, buy what you want, and then, leave, and it be fast and secure like we see on the blockchain. Because right now it's like you look at Ethereum and it's like no one's going to pay the fees required to process a transaction at a store using ETH right now. And then there's obviously a lot of other ones that might be, but they're just not adopted and stuff. So how do you see, what you guys are building possibly integrating into real world utility with people actually having a wallet on their phone that they can use in their day-to-day life outside of the DeFi system and stuff?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's look at it this way. Yeah. When I don't normally like to use the word crypto a lot these days, right? One is a bit sensitive, obviously, because of all the shit that happened last year that we all know too well. But at the same time, I think it also limits the imagination. Yeah, it really limits the imagination. I look at it more from a digital asset perspective, right? That could be crypto assets, right? Network native tokens. It could be tokenized assets. It could be real world assets, could be digital, right? It doesn't really matter, but it's tokenizing based on something. And then there's stable coins, and there's various different types of stable coin, of course. And then there's CBDC, right? Central bank digital currency. I look at the universe of, at the minimum, those 4 types, very unique types of digital assets to make up the entire kind of spectrum of where all of this is going. I look at it that way. Now, if you're saying, do I see people using like crypto assets as a way to go buy coffee? I'm sure in some places, we will continue to see more and more of it. But is that going to go mainstream as we would all like it to be? I don't know, to be honest, right? I think that is a long time away. Just the reality of people's acceptance. Look, the 4 of us are in crypto, so we obviously understand it. Are we more comfortable with it? Probably than the average Joe. But for everyone to get on that bandwagon, that will be a long time. However, if you look at the other aspects of digital assets, right, what I talked about, can I realistically see people using stablecoin, some sort of stablecoin, to actually go buy coffee? I can certainly see it, of course, right? I think people are already doing it. Mm-hmm. Now, then the question is, which stablecoin? On what chain?
Right.
Pegged by what? I mean, there are stablecoins that are pegged by actual assets, right? Either fiat or some, deposits, right? Things like USDC, for example. And then there's algorithmic stablecoins, but even algorithmic stablecoins have variances, right? There are algorithmic stablecoins like Terra Luna, yep. Which is probably, right? If you ask most of the regulators, the ones that actually understand what it is, they'll all be like, right? So I don't think that's going to go very far. But you do see algorithmic stablecoins that are based on non-native chain tokens, but other on-chain assets. Now that could be more interesting. That's just basically a basket, right? A basket of different currency. And you see lots of currencies in the real world that are like that, right? Singapore dollar is actually a basket of currencies, right? And they balance that out as they go. So you can certainly see that. Now, what that means, though, is then you need facilities and you need mechanisms that allows you in a very flexible way to handle stablecoin. And it can't just be, oh, this wallet supports this version of this stablecoin, and that wallet supports that version of stablecoin. Like, come on, right? How many apps and how many things do I need to do? You are going to want to have a unified account that allows you to do that. Maybe even do the swap behind the scene for you, right? That would be very interesting. Now, if I take you back to Odyssey, just using that example right there, right? What if you have a dWallet that has nothing but stablecoin, but different type of stablecoin? Mm-hmm. Or more importantly, maybe all we have is the addresses for different stablecoin, right? And at a moment in time, at the moment's notice, when you need something, rather than having a Tron version of USDC, an Algorand version of USDC, and an Ethereum version of USDC, all having some balance in there, what if I'm able to do that on the fly? Now, I can certainly see applications, working with developers to build an application on top of Odyssey just to do that, and then tying it into a payment network and into a payment gateway. I can totally see that. Now, would something like that have more legs in terms of pushing this into more of the mainstream? I'd like to think so. Right? In this part of the world, we have lots of migrant workers. And many of them, have been very used to using the likes of the Western Unions, right? And then lately, the Alipays and the WeChat Pays and whatnot, right? Because the fees are relatively low. You just have to install apps on both sides, and then you can connect to the bank. Well, why can't you do stablecoin-centric payment rails, but without restricting them on a particular chain? Wouldn't that be interesting? Right. Yes. So I think when we get to that point and you have the facility and the account management, policies that you could do that, I think we can start to see a lot more use cases using that specific example. And it is still leveraging the speed, the security, the decentralization on the different chain that are running these quote unquote stablecoin. That's what I see.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that would reduce a lot of friction because just from my own personal perspective, I use USDC a lot. I mean, I know it has had some controversy when it depegged for a little bit, but I still think it's a relatively safe stable coin. But on Algorand, not all of the exchanges support USDC-A. So sometimes when I have USDC in my Algorand wallet and I want to get it to Coinbase, I have to bridge it to Solana and then send it to Coinbase that way. And then I can send it to my bank, wait a couple days, and then I can finally use it. I mean, the amount of friction that's there when I could, in theory, just use the stable coin in my wallet and pay at a merchant is astronomical. It's night and day. And I think once we get to those levels and reduce that friction along the way, I think that's when crypto will start to hit that next wave of adoption. Well, digital assets, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I would even say this. It's like, wouldn't you think that? I mean, I know, Sean, you said that this is, we're years and we're a really long way away from maybe that type of future. Because I agree, you walk. I know my family; they don't understand crypto at all. They don't even want to an extent. It's almost like we're seeing that, not fear of the internet, but like, I mean, I wasn't there. I mean, I grew up in it, but like, I didn't know. I wasn't there really like analyzing like, oh, is the internet going to be a good thing or bad thing? Like people are right now analyzing, is crypto going to be a good thing or bad thing? But it has those similarities, but you have to think that technology is progressing faster and faster and faster, and the internet took 25 to 30 years to get from where it was to where it is now. But with AI, don't you think that this could happen a lot faster, and the curve could be more seamless with a lot of the tools we're seeing being created in AI?
We haven't even figured out blockchain and crypto to the fullest extent yet. And now you want to talk about AI? Come on.
That's how it is.
It's true. It's true. I mean, but it just seems like everything is moving so fast. Like, how do you keep up with? I mean, it's hard enough for me to keep up with what Algorand is doing. Nonetheless, try to keep up with everything else, and then you have meme coins coming up that are doing what they're doing. I mean, it really is crazy.
Dave's got meme coin on the brain.
Well,
That's all he can think about.
Well, no, and here's why I say that, because someone literally, I mean, the turbo meme coin, I know it's not as talked about as Pepe, but that was someone who started with like $69 or something and put it in an AI tool and said, create me the best meme coin that there is. Like, you're literally seeing how fast AI can change the game and do things. So it is interesting, and thinking that like how fast this future could come upon us. I don't know. That's just my thought.
So but I got some questions though, Shark. I love talking to you right now, so I want to pick your brain. Let's talk about macro right now.
Sure.
What do you see in macro? I know you say you worked in, you're doing some regulation. Can you break down kind of what your role is, or what are you doing? And we're all in the US, and just talk about some differences between Hong Kong or the international world and the US.
Okay, all right. So let's take a more of a macro view, and it's still going to be relevant towards what we're doing, of course, right? But I'll touch upon that, in a bit. So I have an advisory role with an organization called the Crypto Council for Innovation. It is, you can think about it like a think tank, a crypto digital asset think tank. You may or may not have heard about it. It was started in, I think, about a year and a half ago. Now, but you have definitely heard of its members. Its members in alphabetical order: A16Z, Block, Coinbase, Fidelity, and so on, OpenSea, and a few others. The goal of this council. This council is not your run-of-the-mill blockchain association, right? The goal is not to have hundreds of members and a massive logo list. That is not the goal. The goal is to have some very key global players that are looking at regulation and policies in a global and macro sense, rather than a specific state, city, or country sense. Yeah. So that's why some of the names that I mentioned before, and they're not all just exchanges or VCs, right? Block is obviously a payment provider. Fidelity is a traditional TradFi, even though they're very heavy into digital asset. So the goal of us is to really have direct engagements with regulators and policymakers, so that we can both learn and understand what their concerns are, but then also represent the industry in some fashion or another to also educate them on where things are. And when I use the word educate, I got to be very careful, right? Because no policymakers like you to tell them what to do. I'd like to probably use the word sharing, right? Sharing the insight, sharing the the thinking and also where things are actually going. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Obviously, at the end of last year, after FTX happened, the entire world is looking at crypto and pointing fingers in crypto as if it's this, massively dirty thing. The reality is, most of it happened in a segment of crypto, and that's I think all of us would call it CeFi, right?
Right.
CeFi is centralized finance, and the centralized finance, coincidentally, don't actually operate that differently than your bank down the street. They actually operate in very, very similar manner. Now, the biggest difference, however, is your bank, at least the ones in the US and most developed countries around the world, economies around the world, are regulated, right? With some guidance and some regulation one way or another. Many of them are quite internationally standardized as well.
Mm-hmm.
In the world of CeFi in crypto, not yet, right? So that's why I think the last 6 months, I will tell you, most of the consultation papers that I have seen around the world, not just in the US, are all focusing around risk management, around segregating client assets to platform assets, around policies that make sure that the commingling of assets doesn't go in place, and how do you actually put in the right risk exposure, risk profiling, AML, CFT, all of those things back into how things properly need to be protected from a consumer perspective, right? Now, a lot of policymakers also like to think that by putting all of these things out, then they have solved the world of the problem of crypto. What they haven't realized is that has only solved the CeFi problem, right? And I wouldn't even use the word solved. It is going to move CeFi along, right? In I would believe, a better place. I mean, regulation is not bad. What is bad is bad regulation. Yeah. Right. Progressive regulation, I think, is actually very much needed. But it cannot just be, oh, it looks like this, then I'm just going to throw something on top of it and just call it that, right? That is not healthy, because unless you really understand how things are and where things are being developed, that's probably not very responsible in doing so as well. I am not pointing any fingers. I'm not naming any names. I'm just saying we all see it in the news, and some of us agree, some of us don't agree, right? So that's where things are. Now, I would tell you that I think most of the global regulators and policymakers have kind of gotten the CeFi side sorted out, because it's not all that different. So once someone have release some guidance, and somebody else is just going to say, okay, I'm going to have some variance here, plop on top of that, and then you're going to see that. So I think that's very healthy. That creates consistency and hopefully some standardization around CeFi. Now, the big elephant in the room is, what about DeFi? How do you regulate DeFi, right? So we've actually been the Crypto Council has been spending a lot of time, coming up with a DeFi kind of white paper to look at very specifically on what are some of those policy recommendations that would actually make sense, right? Because if you think about DeFi and CeFi, this is how I would explain to a regulator, or at least someone from the team that actually want to understand. Right, CeFi, everything is vertical siloed, and the entity owns every single layer. Mm-hmm. Settlement layer, the asset layer, the protocol layer, the application layer, everything is all there, right? If you think about it, right? But if you think about DeFi, every single layer is owned by different parties, and many of them are indeed permissionless platforms. So then how do you point the finger and say, well, the settlement layer, I mean, we all know in the DeFi world, the settlement layer is actually the underlying blockchain. Right. And most of the blockchains that we're talking about are indeed decentralized, one way or another, again, over a spectrum. But that settlement layer operates very differently than how you would see it in CeFi. CeFi is basically a ledger, right? They don't actually move assets. If I'm transferring something to you, right? Like, I'm not transferring anything. It's just your ledger going up and my ledger going down. And it's the same database, right? Yep. DeFi is very different. I'm actually moving. There's a transaction on chain that we can verify. That's very different. What about the asset? Well, the asset is not sitting on a, in a platform wallet. It's in your wallet, it's in my wallet, right? Hopefully it's more non-custodial than otherwise. So the asset layer looks very different. The protocol layer looks very different. It's all controlled by smart contract mostly. Right. And then, of course, the application may still have some centralized notion to it. And maybe that's where regulation is going to end up falling upon from a DeFi stack perspective, because that is the one that actually touches the end user rather than the settlement layer, which is the blockchain or the wallets or whatever it is, right? So there are a lot of nuances to really think about where things are. That's the next step in terms of what the Crypto Council is working on. I'm obviously one of the contributors in helping them kind of come up with a lot of the nuances, and also, quite frankly, what us as entrepreneurs and founders in the blockchain space that are actually seeing out there, like we want to make sure we're able to share the notion of where technology is going and what are some of the community thoughts are, so we can actually build that into proper policies, hopefully, right? Quote unquote, hopefully. That's what we're working on. Now, the very interesting thing, though, is if I were to kind of pull myself out, is that outside of the US, you have, for example, in Europe, they recently have a new update with MiCA, right?
Yep.
And that's been very progressive. I mean, MiCA is a very interesting thing, right? If you look at the very beginning of MiCA, it was actually it wasn't even put in place for crypto. It was actually put in place because Facebook came up with its own currency, right? And then the whole world is like, oh my God, 2 billion people in a single network, trespassing any cross-border nature, then oh my God, right? So that's how they came together to come up with the infancy of MiCA. And then, of course, that then turned into the first version of more around stablecoin. And then now they start to talk about DAOs, they talk about NFTs and many other things in there. You look at the UK, the FCA has been very aggressive in pulling things out. But even within Europe, France and Germany have been very aggressive in trying to provide more clarity because they want to attract all of these businesses that are now feeling very uncertain in one particular part of the world where you guys are, and potentially be able to attract some of these projects that are going into the space. Here in Asia, we talked a little bit about this earlier. There are lots of very interesting movements happening, right? I'd say, I've been traveling. I mean, those of you that follow me on Twitter and on LinkedIn sees I travel quite a bit. I just came back from Consensus. But the time that I am here in Hong Kong, the last 3 months, I've been meeting so many friends from international friends coming in, because there is now much more clarity around where the government and where the regulator wants this to go. But there's also this interconnectedness that I talked about before, right? Crypto, tokenized assets, stablecoin, and CBDC. There's only one place in the world that actually have a lot of those components built in. That is right here in Hong Kong. So that's why a lot of people are coming here. But don't forget Japan, the third largest economy in the world. I was in Tokyo in December last year and met with JFSA, which is their regulator. And they have been very progressive in thinking about what segments within the overall digital assets that they want to focus on, and use that as a way to attract projects domestically to build, and also international projects to go list, right? In fact, the current ruling party is called the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, yeah? About a month ago, they released their Web3 white paper. This is the party, right? This is the politicians releasing a Web3 white paper. Now, you may think, oh my God, this is like groundbreaking. Well, let me tell you, April last year, 2022, they released the first version of the NFT white paper. Same party, yeah? So there are lots of things happening around the world. And I think, if anyone is listening to this stream, I would say you need to hedge. You need to diversify, right? Blockchain and crypto is global in nature. You may start to build in a particular place, but you got to think, where am I going to diversify, both from a resources perspective, from an investment perspective, and then you also need to pay attention to where things are. I mean, the Odyssey projects were domiciled in Switzerland, right? Why? Because Switzerland actually has a definition, or I would say classification of tokens called, you ready? Not securities, right? Not securities, not commodities. You can actually be classified as a utility token.
That's perfect.
Which is what we all call this, right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, you can't just say I'm a utility token and then I'm now one, right? No, they actually go through the ringer to see what is the actual utility of the token. Is it actually being used for something, not just trading? So Pepe is not going to work. Sorry.
Oh no! Everybody, if
But
you're in
network
the chat,
native,
get out.
Right. So network native tokens that you can use it for based on your architecture and continuing in the use cases can get a classification called a utility token. That's why we're domiciled there. But we talked about Algorand before, right? Algorand is domiciled in Singapore. Why? Because the token mostly are classified under the Payment Services Act. So it follows the payment side. Doesn't mean there's no regulation, doesn't mean there's no rules to follow, but it follows the payment side of things, which is very different than securities. Now, it doesn't say assets that are created on the Algorand ecosystem that actually mimics or represent an actual equity should not be considered a security. Of course it should. But the native token should have different destination. So again, I just want to kind of give you a sense that there are lots that are happening around the world. This is actually the very first time, because of some pressure in one part of the world, that forces people to really think. But fundamentally, blockchain and crypto is global. We should think global anyways.
Yes.
Right.
I have.
Go for it, David. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I have one thing, just that a lot of what you said there kind of brings to, my mind, and that is, we see so many assets. I mean, literally, I think if you go to coin market cap, I think it's like, I don't even know, 20. It's in the 20,000, 30,000 probably now. I don't even know how many assets. And you talk about diversification, you talk about utility, right? And so, like, realistically, in a digital asset utility token future where it is regulated, it's not a security, it's not a commodity, it's its own thing because it should be, and it has its own regulations. Like, how much of the space do you think will get regulated out to where we don't have, like a lot of people would say meme coins are stupid, we don't need them, right? But there is a certain aspect that would say it's a decentralized world. Why shouldn't someone be able to create Pepe token if they want it? Why shouldn't someone be able to create, I don't know, their favorite thing if they like it and a certain group wants to collect it? It's like Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? If they like this, they should be able to in fact transact on it. So what do you see as far as when regulation fully kind of goes through and does its thing? Like, are we still going to see this massive flood of new tokens and all this stuff to use, or I don't even want to say invest, but a lot of people do, right? And it's hard to know what's good and what's not.
Look, I don't have a clear answer for you, right? I think if I do, I'll be on every talk show around the world. So I don't, yeah. But I think that's a responsible answer as well, because I honestly don't. What I can tell you though is that, we have to kind of balance this mentality where on one side it's innovation, and then the other side is regulation. Like, these two things, very often we think they go head to head, but they don't need to. There needs to be some middle ground that everyone can play. And we've seen that over and over again, right? I know many people may not know this, right? Before crypto and blockchain, I spent about 10 years in the cloud computing space. And I remember, again, not naming any names, taking regulators into a data center and then showing them what cloud looked like. And I remember vividly, a few of them says, wait, I thought the cloud is up there, right? And I'm like, well, there's actually nothing up there. And they're like, you're in the satellite, aren't they? I'm like, no, the satellite is a communication relay, right? Everything sits down here, right? And we're the whole network is distributed. I wouldn't call it decentralized, distributed, right? And then you have rules and policies. And then they're like, why are some that are in cages and some that you need to unlock with, retina scan, and some just a log, and some you can just walk through? Why does some actually have cables that'll wrap around the server many, many times, right? And I'm like, well, how do I explain latency to a policymaker, right? Like, I mean, these things are not exactly easy. But I think the goal here is that the reason I'm giving you that answer is it took a while before the three of us, I don't know, there are only three of us left on the screen here, but it took a while for us now not even to think about whether we're using the cloud or not. Right. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we're like, which cloud am I on? Is the cloud safe? Is my data being stolen? Is there a privacy issue? Blah, blah, blah.
Is it going to rain?
Right? No. Right. If if they lose my data, where is it going to be? All that, right? Look, those questions should still be asked, but we don't really ask them all that much anymore because we've gone through this process and different regulators come up with different rules. So that's why you still have different data privacy laws and different data sovereignty rules in different parts of the world, but they're more or less similar, not exactly the same, similar. We need to get to that phase in crypto. We are not there yet. We're literally in like step 1 of that journey. We are not there yet. So there's no silver bullets. There is no, I think it is a journey. I'm hoping that it will get there faster than later. Because we all need some level of clarity, right? But, do we need all of these coins? I won't even put a label on them. That do nothing but to trade. Personal opinion. This is Sean Lee's personal opinion only. I don't represent anyone. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I agree.
I agree. This is C. Will's opinion only, not the next block.
David might disagree, but
no.
David disagrees.
It's not even that I don't disagree. I agree. Like, I've talked to many other, people in the space who say, at the end of it, we may see a few, maybe 100 that actually have, like Sean Lee was saying, utility, right? And actually get that label and are actually used like by people on decentralized applications or in the real world use case somehow. I mean, we're seeing even on Algorand, Fly Bondi using NFTs, right, for tickets. We're seeing the agro token for agriculture and being able to store grain on the blockchain. So I know there's going to be utility tokens. I was just more referencing a little bit of the idea that if it is truly decentralized, there should be still an aspect that assets can get created and by anyone anywhere, but they shouldn't have. I do agree, like when I play Fractal Monsters, which is a game built on the Algorand blockchain, I earn a FRAC token for the activities that I do. But that FRAC token does not have a USD value, right? I can't go take it to an exchange and trade it and make money off of that. I can only use it in the game. But I do, that's kind of where I'm at with thinking that, some things will go away, but utility will stay.
Yeah, that's the grand hope, I believe, honestly. So this conversation's been fantastic, and I do honestly want to give you one bit of props. I know you were just at Consensus, and I saw this. Let me share it on the screen, and I thought it was some really good marketing. So let me put this on the screen if I can. Let's see. All right. So we've got these DeFi for your mom shirts. So I was truly loving these. Honestly, I thought they were great, and I think it's great branding, and it's exactly what we need to do in this space. We need to make it easier. We need to remove the friction. And I just wanted to give you the heads up that I really appreciated that marketing, and I really appreciate your time today coming on the show, answering all our questions about the project, about regulation. There's so much more I wanted to get to, but hopefully we'll have you back in the future and answer some more of those questions.
Awesome. No, it's been fun. I think this is the type of topics that I really truly love to talk about, because we're all passionate about the possibility, right? And in many cases we are actually seeing the infancy of some of these actually going to work. We need more of it, but we do need to take down silos. We need to break down the notion that this is better than the other or locked in. I mean, those of us that are older remember the days when you basically can't get rid of mainframes and can't get rid of databases. Why? Because all of the data is locked in, and they make it impossible for you to migrate data from one system to another.
It's like Apple; they keep you trapped.
Well, we cannot do that in blockchain, right? Blockchain is not meant to be that. Now, is bridging the answer? Well, it's part of the answer. It's not the entire answer. I think we spent a little bit of time earlier talking about that. So I think what we're doing with decentralized access control, with some others that are doing kind of chain agnostic communication protocols. I think there's a lot of different ways that all of us are trying to solve this interoperability problem, because until we get to that point, we are still going to be like, I'm in this Algorand ecosystem, I'm in that ecosystem, I wear this t-shirt and I don't wear that. look, do we really need to do that?
No.
Yes, we will. Odyssey will have T-shirts as well. Okay, I'm just saying that out loud. But it's not about that, right? It's about how do we can play together? That's the goal.
Yeah,
right. Absolutely.
I agree.
Well, Sean, we have a couple more questions, but I don't want to keep, we're a little over time, but we definitely have more questions about nodes, tokenomics, regulations, and the whole 9 yards. So hopefully you'll agree to come back on the show maybe in a couple months as development is a little further along. But as I said before, we really appreciate your time today. And if you could just wait just 1 second before we say goodbye to the crowd. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Check out the description down below for links to Odsy. There's the Odyssey. There's the Twitter link down there, as well as links to non-fungible domains, a great sponsor of the show. And we'll catch everybody next week.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Take care.